I'm talking with psychotherapist and author Dr. Mike Dow. Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, Mícheál. How are you?
Very good. So tell me, Mike, who are you and what do you do?
So, I am the author of The Brain Fog Fix. I specialize in treating people from the whole person approach. And what I mean by that is I don't believe we can just focus on somebody's nutrition or just their psychology or just their relationships or just their spiritual lives. So what made me really want to write the Brain Fog Fix was that, first of all, I believe that so many people around the world are experiencing what I call brain fog. So it's mild anxiety, mild depression, what I call pre-dementia or mild neurocognitive disorder. So you just can't remember things like you used to. You're just not thinking clearly. You're just not feeling like yourself. So I really felt the need to write this book to help all of those people around the world, because when you look at the statistics and looking at how, for example, depression rates are going up or Alzheimer's disease is tripling in the next few decades, I think there's something we're doing quite wrong in terms of what we're eating, how we're living or not loving, how we've sort of given up spiritual practice. And that is why I think more and more people around the world are being diagnosed with what I call brain fog.
What do you think is contributing to this rising levels of mental conditions, Mike?
Just taking food, for example, because the first third of the brain fog fix really focuses on our food. And I tell you how, for example, these omega-3 superfoods that I have in my book have been shown to reduce anxiety, reduce depression, reduce your risk of dementia. And what's really interesting is that factory farming, which has become more and more common around the world, so even the meat that we used to eat 20 years ago is so different than the meat that we're now eating globally now, because it's factory farmed, which isn't just bad for the animal. It's actually quite bad for you. It increases the amount of pro-inflammatory omega-6s, and the anti-inflammatory omega-3s go down. And that's true for beef, chicken, dairy, eggs. So we're just not eating the omega-3s as much as we used to. And of course, a lot of people aren't eating those, the best source of omega-3s, which are these omega-3 superfoods, which includes fish and also walnuts and flaxseed. We're just not eating as many vegetables and fruits as we should. So we know in studies from around the world that the happiest people who experience the least amount of depression and anxiety are eating 7 servings of vegetables and whole fruits every day. And most people are just eating 1 or 2. So that's just an example of how our diet, for example, has a profound impact. So I do believe, again, that it's everything we're doing. It's how we're living, how we're eating, and we can sort of directly see the correlation between that and the spiraling rates of brain fog around the world.
What do you mean by brain drain, Mike?
Well, what's really interesting is that people just start to feel foggy. So, for example, after you eat a diet that's high in processed carbohydrates, so let's say you eat that sandwich, or you have some fish and chips, or you have pasta for lunch. If we gave you a memory test after you came back from lunch and you were at your desk, your memory would not work as well, and you just would not be thinking as clearly as somebody who had something that was healthier. Now, that's a little troubling in the short term, but what we also know in the long term is that if you continuously spike your blood sugar with these processed carbohydrates, too much bread, flour, sugar, pasta, you are at much higher risk for more serious forms of brain fog like dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So I think that this link is really troubling for people, and maybe they're starting to say, oh, I understand where this brain drain might be coming from, and I also understand why I may be feeling the way I do.
Can you give me an example of that, say, a person I know who's working or maybe studying?
Yeah, so I think so many of us, there a lot of the patients that I treat here in my private practice in Los Angeles, they have very stressful jobs. And, so not only are they not sleeping, but, I want to talk about this downward spiral that I see is more common. So what happens is we're checking our iPhones and our iPads and checking our email at not just 7 o'clock, but 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 p.m. We're checking social media, so that bombards our eyes, which then send a signal to our brains that say that it's still daytime. So of course our brains don't pump out the melatonin, and then we have trouble getting to sleep, and we don't sleep well, and then we wake up groggy, and then we need probably a little bit more caffeine than we should. So then, of course, when you're tired, you also crave unhealthy foods. And of course, when you're tired, you don't want to exercise. So then we're sort of on this downward spiral, and then you're sort of just existing through your day, struggling to get through all of your meetings and the spreadsheets and the assignments and the emails that you have to handle. And it all just feels like you're sort of running through the mud. And then, of course, you get home and you're stressed out and you're fatigued and you're frazzled. And instead of going to the gym or going to a yoga class, you probably need an extra glass of wine to calm you down. And then the cycle just starts all over again. So I think more and more people are sort of in this, they're sort of caught in this downward spiral, and they're not getting what they need to naturally produce those levels of those feel-good dopamine and serotonin, and their stress hormone levels of cortisol. The cortisol levels are just too high. So it's really interesting that when we look at how more and more people, I certainly the people that I treat here and people who are reading my book and relate to this downward spiral, I think it's become the norm for many people.
What are the long-term impacts of this downward spiral, Mike?
A lot. There are a lot of long-term consequences. Of course, addiction, whether that addiction is sleeping pills, alcohol, too much coffee. Now the good news is that in the brain fog fix, it's a very moderate approach. So, for example, I share some statistics, and a glass or two of wine a day can reduce your risk of brain fog, and including dementia, by over 20%. And 3 cups of coffee a day can reduce your risk of brain fog, including dementia, by over 50%. So there are healthy levels of these foods in our lives. But when we look at some of the other long-term consequences of drinking too much alcohol, too much coffee, it's not only physical dependence and addiction, but it's also dementia, it's also anxiety, it's depression, it's ADHD as our attention spans grow shorter and shorter. And then, of course, the worst case scenario, because when this happens over the long term, we get our brains just don't work as quickly or as sharply as they could, and then we get mild brain fog. And whether those are senior moments or mommy brain, you may be diagnosed with a mild neurocognitive impairment, which is basically pre-dementia, and then that turns into dementia, which can turn into Alzheimer's disease. So you can kind of see the urgency here, and why I really wanted to write this book, to really help people reverse and prevent the brain fog that more and more people are experiencing.
You mentioned there that our attention spans are reducing. Why exactly is that happening, Mike?
Well, I have a chapter in the Brain Fog Fix called Digital Distraction. And, I think more and more of us are trying to multitask. But we know that from brain scans that when people are multitasking, and I'll put that in quotes because they think they're multitasking, what they're actually doing is they are rapidly single tasking. So they're switching back and forth rapidly between 2 different tasks, or sometimes 3 or 4. Now we know that the human brain, there's a loss of efficiency. So you can switch pretty rapidly between very simple tasks. So let's say you're having a conversation with a friend and on the phone, and you're just talking about your day, and you're just mindlessly washing dishes. That's probably fine, but we know that as the complexity of the tasks grows, that you will lose more and more time because you are trying to switch back and forth between these very complex tasks. So let's say you're finishing an email and you really need all of your brain power to write a very concise, eloquent email, while also trying to have a conversation with your significant other about your child's problems in school. Your brain is not only overwhelmed, but you're losing efficiency. So you would actually save time by giving all of your attention to one task and then moving on to the next task. So we also see in terms of attention span that the millennials and younger people, and I think now all people, we're spending more and more time on social media, and you would think that people who are used to being on their phones all day would be great at filtering out irrelevant stimuli. So let's say you're on your phone and you need to concentrate on what you're doing on your phone, and you're in an office environment, and there's people talking all around you. You would think that people who are heavy media multitaskers would be good at just sort of tuning out the world, when actually the opposite is true. So people who are on their phone all day can't filter out other conversations, so their brains are just sort of they're not able to focus like a laser. And we know that if you give your all of your attention, and you really work on helping your attention span and helping your brain to focus on one thing and only one thing at a time, that your attention span and your productivity might increase as a result.
Do you think our brains are becoming overloaded with all of this information?
Oh, absolutely. I think more and more people are just fed up and frazzled, overwhelmed, not sleeping well, just feeling sort of like zombies. It's like you're half living all day. And basic tasks, from going to work to cooking breakfast, just start to feel very difficult. Um, but I also believe that there's a lot of hope that people can sort of bust the brain fog with some simple strategies based on not just what we eat, but also how we're living and how we're going about our daily lives.
And is there a way to change that?
Absolutely. So, the second week of the brain fog fix is called the 7-day energy revolution. So the first 7 days is focusing on mood, the 7-day mood revolution. Now, in that second week, a lot of people talk about these juice cleanses, and you get rid of all the sugar and all that. Well, guess what I'm going to do in the brain fog fix? I'm going to help you to go on a social media cleanse and a technology cleanse. And one of the most powerful parts of my program that will help people to reset their brains. The good news is you can still check your phone and you can still email. But what I have people do is I have them take 3 waking hours a day during this second week. And you go technology free. So that can be, an hour at lunch and 2 hours at night. And, it's really profound is when people can do that, they just start to feel more like themselves, and you just start to you start to pay attention to the people around you. You start to have conversation. You start to have a conversation with a friend or a colleague or a loved one, and you start to really pay attention to what they're saying rather than half listening while half looking for text on your phone. And this really has the power to sort of reset the brain, so you can start to feel more peaceful and less frazzled in your daily life.
What kind of suggestions do you have in doing that, Mike?
Well, I think it's taking that 3 hours, and it's also rethinking your relationship to electronics in the afternoon and the evening. That's going to help you to become more still and more present. I know that I used to be somebody who used to watch TV late at night is the time when I probably I find myself really sort of tired, and I sort of watch TV, and I used to watch TV up until I went to bed, and I would have sleeping problems. And now the last thing that I do when I go to sleep is I read a book, and from a real book, not a reader, because we know that those reading on your iPad or other devices can give too much blue light. So I have one of those those old incandescent bulbs, and I have it on a dimmer. And what's interesting is even the light bulbs that we use. Some of these energy saving compact fluorescent and LED bulbs, they're great for the kitchen. They're great for the living room. But in the bedroom, they emit too much blue light, which is the kind of light, the frequency that tells your pineal gland, which is the part of your brain that releases melatonin, that it's daytime. So if you have those compact fluorescent bulbs or LED lights in your bedroom, you may want to change those and use an incandescent, which are those just those old cheap light bulbs, and put it on a dimmer. So that your brain, because those have less blue light, so that you can actually sleep better. So it's just rethinking our relationship to electronics. Because listen, electronics and iPhones, they're great devices. They help us to be more productive, to stay connected. But then it does reach a point, doesn't it, where we're now sort of using social media, but it's making us too antisocial, or we're just too connected. So I think it's finding that middle ground between too connected and frazzled, Um, and just having a more moderate and balanced approach to technology and lights in our lives, which funny enough that even the light bulbs have an effect on brain fog. Who would have ever thought that?
We need to find a way to control the technology rather than allowing the technology to control us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more and more people we actually become addicted. Much like a gambler, every time the cherries line up on that slot machine and they get a little, they won $5. A little shot of dopamine goes off in their brain, which can become addictive. That's what happens to our phone. So every time we get a little ding and a little light goes off on our phone, and somebody likes our Instagram photo or likes our Facebook post, those pulls can actually become addictive because every time you get that ding, you're getting a little hit of dopamine in your brain.
Talking about food then, Mike, how much does food affect our mood?
I think it's the single most it's the thing that can both improve brain fog the most, and also it's probably the number one villain that causes brain fog. So, what's really interesting is that I have all sorts of recommendations in this first week where I really take on diet, looking at the kinds of fats, looking at the kinds of proteins, looking at the kind of vegetables and fruits. Some of my top brain fog busting foods include those omega-3 superfoods like fish, but also this what's really, frankly, a miracle spice, which is turmeric, and which is that that yellow spice that gives curry its yellow color. And you combine that with black pepper, which could potentially reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by up to 90%. So, of course, in the brain fog fix, I have a recipe for a wellness shot that you just combine a half teaspoon of both turmeric and black pepper in a little bit of water, and you take a little shot of that every day. Looking at the fruits, blueberries could slow cognitive decline by about 2.5 years if you eat blueberries every day. And then, of course, probably the greatest, well, two of the greatest offenders, which is number one, soybean oil. Soybean oil is a very cheap oil, a form of fat that is in almost all processed foods around the world because it is so cheap for food manufacturers. If you can swap cheap for them, bad for you soybean oil, which is very high in pro-inflammatory omega-6s, for the very best oil for your brain, which is olive oil. We know in studies that can preserve your cognitive function. It can help to banish brain fog. And by the way, extra virgin olive oil tastes so much better than those cheap store-bought salad dressings made with sugar and soybean oil. So it's making that switch to from soybean oil to olive oil. And by the way, if you are cooking, you don't want to cook with extra virgin olive oil because it's not stable at high temperatures. What you want to look for when you're cooking with olive oil is light olive oil, or something that's just labeled plain olive oil that doesn't say extra virgin or virgin. And then also those proteins. So again, switching from factory farmed meats, conventionally grown eggs and dairy products, to organic, free-range animal products, which have higher levels of omega-3s and lower levels of omega-6s. And then, of course, the best source of omega-3s, which are fish and seafood like wild-caught salmon, but also some farm-raised varieties, farm-raised rainbow trout, farm-raised Arctic char, for example, are very high in omega-3s and also very low in toxins. And I, of course, have a comprehensive list of those omega-3 superfoods because it is quite confusing. So for example, you don't want to eat farm-raised salmon, but if you're buying rainbow trout, for example, farm-raised is great. So, I have a very extensive list in my book to help people to navigate the grocery store or restaurants and, which fish should I buy farm-raised, which do I need to buy wild-caught. And then for for you vegetarians out there, vegetarian omega-3 superfoods like walnuts, flaxseed, which have very high levels of the omega-3 ALA, which your body converts into the omega-3s EPA and DHA, which are the forms of omega-3 that can banish brain fog, because EPA improves your mood and DHA improves cognitive function and can really preserve that cognitive function as we age. So really, there's so much we can do in terms of our diet. Let's face it, we all, it's something that we all do 3 to 6 times a day, right? We sit down and we make a choice, and it's a very important one. It can either set you up for brain fog, or it can banish and prevent it.
What's the link between, say, anxiety and depression then, Mike, with regard to food?
Well, what's interesting, anxiety and depression tend to go hand in hand for most people. Some of my patients have a little bit more anxiety than depression. Some have more depression than anxiety. But when we talk about the two main feel-good hormones, neurotransmitters, that the Brain Fog Fix program is designed to restore, the two feel-good chemicals are serotonin and dopamine. So when your serotonin levels are high, you feel happy and peaceful. When your dopamine levels are high, you feel happy and excited. So most people with anxiety, they have low levels of serotonin, versus people who are more depressed but not anxious may have lower levels of dopamine. So let's take an example of how your diet can, for people who are either anxious or depressed, support natural serotonin or dopamine production. So looking at serotonin, which is that feel-good neurotransmitter and hormone that is going to make you feel happy but also banish anxiety. The amino acid tryptophan that you get from your diet is converted into 5-HTP, which then converts into serotonin, but your body needs all these cofactors like folate and other B vitamins and vitamin C and iron to really make that conversion. So we can see that if you're getting tryptophan from, let's say you're eating a banana, and then you're having whole grains like quinoa, and you're getting all your amino acids from these complete proteins, and then you're eating 7 servings of fruits and vegetables, so you're getting all the folate and the B vitamins that you need, then your body can naturally make that the conversion from the tryptophan that you're already eating in your diet, and then it will convert to 5-HTP and then to serotonin. So then you feel happy and you banish anxiety. Now, for people with depression who have low levels of dopamine, who they're not anxious, but they feel, their energy is low. They feel sort of a low energy depression. They're eating, we all eat that amino acid tyrosine. So let's say you're having some organic eggs which have tyrosine in them. Your body will convert that tyrosine into dopamine. But by the way, it also needs the same cofactors, all the B vitamins, folate, vitamin C, iron, to make that conversion, to take the amino acids and turn them into dopamine in your brain. So the good news is, when people follow the Brain Fog Fix program, they're eating the healthy proteins, they're eating healthier carbs. I have a list of carbs that you can eat. So when you're swapping out white rice and you're swapping in quinoa and millet and sprouted flourless bread, that's not going to spike your blood sugar like traditional bread will. You really can see how you can support natural levels of serotonin and dopamine so that you can feel less anxious and less depressed naturally.
And you mentioned there, Mike, about the sugar spikes. Is there a way to prevent that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of ways. So, in the Brain Fog Fix program, you're going to cut out all of the high GI foods. Those are foods they have a very high glycemic index, which spike your blood sugar. The worst offenders, of course, in the global diet are flour and sugar, which you can find in just about any processed food because it's so cheap for them to produce and they make a lot of money. Meanwhile, your health is being affected. So, I'm not somebody who thinks that we should not eat carbs, because carbohydrates, are the brain's preferred source of energy, and carbohydrates can be wonderful, not to mention delicious. So, I have that list of healthy carbs in the book, but also, looking at the way whole fruits, and the best fruit of all for the brain which are berries. Berries actually have a very low glycemic index. And when we look at the way nature made whole fruits, they put, yes, there are natural sugars, but they're combined with fiber and vitamins. So looking at one of my favorite fruits, which are raspberries, high levels of fiber, vitamin C, and they don't spike your blood sugar. So, I actually don't believe in fruit juice. and fruit juice may be a better choice than soda, but it spikes your blood sugar just as much. And we know that spiking your blood sugar consistently can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's disease, in addition to obesity and weight gain. In fact, the plaques that form in the body when you have diabetes are similar to the plaques that form in the brain in dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So we can really see that by making the switch from orange juice to eating a whole orange, or even better, some blueberries and raspberries for breakfast, you're still going to be getting carbohydrates, but they're not going to spike your blood sugar as much. So again, it's not about cutting out carbs, because there's really some wonderful carbs, especially fruits that are just so chock full of antioxidants that are neuroprotective, that can prevent the brain from aging. So you don't want to cut out those carbs, but you do want to make these better choices on a consistent basis.
I was told before to avoid the four W's: the white sugar, the white flour, the white rice, and there's another one as well. I think it was a milk or something like
Yeah, they're terrible for you. And the other thing is that I don't want people to be tricked. Part of my program, people get tricked by wheat. They think, oh, that's whole wheat bread, so that's a better choice. Well, a lot of wheat breads, yes, wheat is a bit better than white, but a lot of wheat breads have the same glycemic index as white bread. So a lot of wheat breads will spike your blood sugar just as much, which is why the one bread that is part of my program in that week one, where you're really doing a diet overhaul. In addition, week one, I should also mention, uses a lot of clinically proven cognitive behavioral therapy interventions to change the way you think, which can change the way you feel. So you're not only going to be thinking like a happy person, you're also going to be eating like a happy person. And going back to this bread, I love this. If you can find sprouted flourless bread, that has a glycemic index in the 30s, whereas most white and even a lot of wheat breads have a glycemic index in the 70s. So you can still eat bread, but it's a much healthier bread made from it's actually sprouted beans and wonderful grains that are high in antioxidants. So it's just about finding those swaps and switches that will work for you.
What are your thoughts on nutrition then, Mike?
My thoughts on nutrition is that it can be your greatest ally, or it can be your greatest enemy. And when we go about our daily lives, the temptation is everywhere. So, there are some wonderful alternatives. So maybe instead of having that burger from a fast food joint, I was just in the UK and I saw that you have that lovely chain Pret a Manger, and looking for those healthier options, and whether that's a black bean soup or a salad with olive oil instead of those cheap soybean oils. We really have to start looking at food as something that can help us live the joyous, powerful lives that we were meant to live. And we also have to know that at every turn, these food companies are trying to sabotage us with these cheap products, soda, bread, that are very cheap to produce, which means higher profits for them, but they have an addictive pull on us. And what I ask people to do is to consider, what is your why? Why are you making the choice to have that salad with olive oil or black bean soup instead of a burger, a conventionally grown factory farmed burger on white bread? Or fish and chips, fried fish with these fried potatoes. Why are you making that? Is it because you want to feel better? Is it because you want to be around and live a long, healthy life so that you can see your children have children? Is it because you want to be successful and work and arrive to your shift clear-headed, and then come back from lunch feeling optimistic that you can have the energy that you're going to need to get through your day? And I think when people can connect with their why, they start to say, oh, I see. I do want to make these healthier choices because I'm going to feel better, and it's going to be actually a lot better for me in the long run as well.
Is there research around that, Mike, to support it?
Absolutely. So we know that this is sort of groundbreaking science. What I did in the brain fog fix is I looked at studies from around the world, and I looked at, for example, I was referencing that turmeric study, looking at rural India and how this one spice can potentially prevent Alzheimer's by up to 90%. Looking at how low levels of inflammation are linked with low levels of depression, and how omega-3 superfoods can not only prevent inflammation in the body and the brain, but also are linked to much lower risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease for people who are eating fish and these omega-3 superfoods on a consistent basis. Looking at the correlation in people who spike their blood sugar with these unhealthy carbs, bread, flour, sugar on a consistent basis, and their risk not only for obesity, which of course, obesity will also lead to depression in many patients, but also looking at the link between spiking your blood sugar and a much higher risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So when we look at this groundbreaking science that has just begun to come out and that I talk about in my book, I think people really say, wow, I had no idea what an impact my diet was in the way that I feel and the health of my brain.
Are there certain vitamins which are essential for our well-being as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and one of the recommendations that I make, because, nature has a way of putting vitamins together in such a potent way that sometimes have a synergistic effect. So, I think that eating a variety of vegetables and whole fruits so that you're getting all of the vitamins that you need is the best way, because nature does, again, have this way of putting together these vitamins and these antioxidants in ways that that no scientist could ever put together in a supplement. I'm not saying that supplements and vitamins are bad as sort of your escape hatch, as sort of the plan B on days that you don't get those vitamins. But I think the best plan A is always to eat a variety of vegetables and whole fruits every day, because then you're guaranteed to get and of course these healthier grains and these healthier protein sources, because then you're guaranteed to get the folate. We know that folate, which is one of the B vitamins, is very powerful in preventing depression and anxiety. In fact, in the U.S., pharmaceutical companies are now packaging folate as a prescription that doctors can prescribe as an add-on treatment for depression and anxiety. So we know, for example, that folate, which you can get in your diet, will have a profound impact on depression, anxiety, as well as all of the other B vitamins. Those B vitamins are just wonderful for your brain. But it's not just the B vitamins, it's everything. It's iron, it's vitamin C. It's really eating this well-balanced diet so that your body and your brain are going to get everything that they need to support healthy levels of your feel-good hormones.
Mike, would you have a suggestion or recommendation in regards to either go for organic or non-organic, say, vegetables and fruit?
Yeah, absolutely. So organic, especially some of those foods that are high in pesticides, listen, if you can afford it, buy organic everything. Now, I also know that that's expensive for people. There's a list called the Dirty Dozen, which looks at the fruits and vegetables that are most heavily sprayed with harmful pesticides. So, for example, blueberries. Blueberries are probably a fruit you always want to go organic, right? But there are other fruits like bananas. It's probably okay to go conventionally raised and save yourself a little money there. So I think people should become very educated, and of course always favor organic when you can, or if money is no object, go organic all the time. But I think people also need to understand that organic is probably even more important when you're buying animal products, because organic in fruits and vegetables means that they're cleaner, less pesticides. But when we're talking about fish, meat, dairy, eggs, organic also means that they're not being fed cheap corn and soy, which means that the milk, dairy, eggs, meat are going to be higher in those pro-inflammatory omega-6s. But for example, if you're buying organic milk, we know that in studies, or organic beef or organic cheese, that they are much higher in those anti-inflammatory omega-3s. So organic is something that's just wonderful for your brain, whether we're talking about fruits, vegetables, milk, dairy, eggs.
What are your thoughts on medication to treat depression and ADHD?
Well, I have a very moderate approach, but I want to speak about this really interesting paradox. I think that as a whole, people we are over medicated. That so many people are turning to medication when medication isn't really solving any problem. And we know, for example, I talk about this famous study from Duke that in the long run, consistent exercise outperforms prescription antidepressants. And then this other famous large-scale study from Canada that showed that an omega-3 supplement that was high in the omega-3 EPA was just as effective in prescription antidepressants in treating major depressive disorder or major depression. So we know that there are more natural ways for people to get that. Now, that being said, there are absolutely some people who need prescription treatment to deal with their conditions, whether it's depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, especially schizophrenia, especially. But the paradox is that so many people taking medication don't need it. And a lot of people who actually need medication, who have more serious mental illnesses, are hesitant to take it. So it's almost as if those people should switch places, you know. But what I do know is that there are other ways that I think most people should try first. So, you know, are you eating this healthy diet? Are you getting enough omega-3s? Are you exercising every day? You know, what I recommend based on these studies that treat depression is 44 minutes a day of exercise, which you will do in week 2 of my program. Are you, also the week 3 that I have in the brain fog fix is called the 7-day spirit revolution. Do you have a spiritual practice? You know, I have these 12-minute meditations that have been shown clinically to reverse memory loss. We also know a lot of the meditations that I have are from a model of psychotherapy called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which has been shown clinically to prevent depression and help to treat depression. So, I think people have to ask themselves, am I doing everything I need to be doing in my life to help me to feel better naturally before I reach for, before I see somebody and really reach for something? You know, is that medication a Band-Aid? And have I addressed all of the things that I need to in my life? And if you've addressed all those things and you're exercising, you're eating right, and you've worked on improving your relationship, and you've evolved spiritually and psychologically, and you are doing all the work on yourself that you need to do, and you still notice that your attention span is suffering, or that you still feel depressed, then I think it's really time to consider prescription medication. But I think too many people use medication as Band-Aids, and they feel like, and they actually use it sort of as a pass, like a hall pass, like I can eat whatever I want, and I can not exercise, and I can not deal with my relationship, and just take this medication to make me feel better. When I think in those cases, medication is not the answer.
How much of a role do you think taking responsibility for our health plays in all of this?
I think it's the most important thing. I think it's paramount. I think we all need to realize that, this doctor-patient relationship. Let's be clear. You are the person who is with you 24 hours a day. You are the person who decides what to put into your mouth, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You are the person who decides how many glasses of wine to eat. You are the person who either walks into that gym or sits on the couch. You are the person who is responsible for your life, for your health, and that can be a very exciting thing. At the end of the day, a doctor that you see for 20 minutes, really, at the end of the day, isn't going to make that much of an impact on your health, except in worst case scenario situations. Yes, if you have every single day made some very bad decisions, or if there is an underlying disease that is genetic, or if there's some abnormality, then yes, of course, that doctor can have a profound impact on your life. Or if you're having a heart attack and your doctor needs to save your life, we know that most illnesses can be prevented, and it's about the lifestyle. It's about what we eat. It's how we live, how much we're sleeping, and we really need to start looking at ourselves. We are the only person who is responsible for our life and our choices on a daily basis.
In regards to the toxins that we're taking in, say even from the foods that we're eating, is there a way you would suggest for people to get rid of those toxins?
Yeah, I think choosing organic foods is a great way. But then there are also, I have a chapter called "Taking on Toxins" in my book, and there are actually some very surprising ways. We know that different chemicals, pesticides, are linked to just about every um, uh, mental illness, from ADHD to depression to anxiety. And there are some really surprising ways. For example, dusting more often. We know that a lot of the chemicals that have been found in mattresses and couch cushions, some of those chemicals can accumulate in dust. So if you keep your house cleaner and you open your windows and you get that dust out, and also house plants. I actually have a list of the plants that have been scientifically proven to clean air better than other plants. So if you get one of the plants that I recommend that can help to clean your air. But I think probably the most significant way to reduce your exposure to toxins, and this is probably surprising to people, is to reduce your body fat. So what's really interesting is that in week 1 of my program, you're going to overhaul your diet, and in week 2, you're going to start exercising for 44 minutes a day. And while the brain fog fix is not a weight loss program, the vast majority of people who follow my program do lose weight. Now, if you lose body fat, we know that a lot of toxins accumulate in fat. That means if you are carrying around excess fat in your body, you're also carrying around excess toxins. So by shedding the excess body fat, you're also shedding the toxins. You're no longer carrying around the toxins that you've already been exposed to throughout your lifetime. So I think that's really interesting that in a lot of ways, the healthier we are, the less toxins we are exposed to on a day-by-day basis.
What are your thoughts to say around fasting as a way to get rid of toxins, Mike?
Well, it's really interesting. I think I'm also an eating disorder specialist, and I think for a lot of people, I've treated a lot of anorexia in my practice, and I treat a lot of people who have binge eating disorder as well. I think for a lot of people, fasting can be a little problematic just psychologically in the way it triggers binges. I would rather people follow a reasonable diet for the rest of their lives on a day-by-day basis rather than fast. I think that's probably a good rule of thumb for most people. I think that there are some people out there that fasting can be a good thing, and obviously there are some people who fast for spiritual and or religious purposes. And if you are one of those people, there are some benefits, but I also think that for a lot of people there are risks. So I think a healthier question that all people can follow is, how can I make healthier choices? How can I not spike my blood sugar as much on a consistent basis? When it comes to health, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it really is it's that slow, steady turtle who wins the race. And so I would rather people make these choices on a more consistent basis.
Mike, how important are relationships for our health and our well-being?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I think love and relationships are the most profound gift that we have on the face of the planet. On our deathbeds, I think we're all going to remember the relationships and the love that we had over the money or the jobs, right? So, they're profound, but they're also, I think one statistic that really surprises people from my program and my book is that being lonely doubles your risk of Alzheimer's disease. So having a healthy relationship isn't just a psychological need and something that makes you happier, but it also makes you physically healthier. We know that people who don't have healthy relationships, you're going to have more depression, you're going to have more anxiety because you don't have the support that you need, and you're also going to double your risk of Alzheimer's disease. Isn't that so fascinating that by improving our relationships, we really are significantly improving our brain health?
In going forward into, say, the new year 2016, and people want to change their so-called bad habits from 2015, would you have any suggestions for them?
Yeah, well, first of all, most people don't keep those New Year's resolutions. So what I suggest for people is, again, going back to this notion that consistency trumps intensity. I would rather you put one foot in front of the other on a more consistent basis than be one of those people, who join the gym on January 1st and are working out for 2 hours a day, and then all of a sudden by February 1st you're no longer going to the gym at all. I would rather you do something that you are going to do that feels attainable to you. So, for example, I think exercise and losing weight is probably the most common New Year's resolution when people start to go back to the gym. I would rather you take 2 brisk 22-minute walks a day for a total of 44 minutes if you're going to do that every single day, rather than join a gym, do it really intensely for a month and then give it up. So I think people really need to be really honest with themselves and say, what are the changes that I can make that I can actually stick to? But I also believe the other good news for people who are maybe listening to you and to our show, to the show right now, and saying, wow, there's so many changes I need to make in my life. The longest journey starts with just a few steps. And I know that when people can put one foot in front of the other and start to make one change at a time, all of a sudden, that's why I sort of broke down my book, The Brain Fog Fix, into 3 weeks, so that people don't have to make all the changes all at once. Week 1 is diet and cognitive behavioral therapy. Week 2 is neurogenesis and exercise and sleep, and circadian rhythm reset. Week 3 is spirituality. So every time you make a change in your life and you start to feel a little bit better, so let's say you just start by eating healthier tomorrow, and then your energy improves, and then you want to eat a little bit healthier the next day, and then by week 2, you feel so good that you have more energy, so now exercising becomes easier. I think that's true for all people, and if you can just focus on how you put one foot in front of the other, you allow all of the feedback that you get to be the positive reinforcement that makes you want to keep going and continue to get better and better and healthier in your life.
Would you be an advocator of people setting goals for the new year?
Yeah, I think goals are always a great thing, and I like goals that tend to be achievable, realistic, and also time sensitive. So I think these large ethereal goals of I need to lose weight. I think those goals are actually focusing on all of the things that are wrong with you. So I think when people make goals, those goals should be really attainable and time sensitive. So, for example, I like goals that sound something depending on what you're trying to work on. So let's just use weight loss as an example. I like a goal that sounds like I would like to lose 2 pounds a month every month in 2016. I like goals that sound like every day I am going to make one healthier choice in what I'm eating, and you can see how how a goal that is phrased like that can be setting you up for success. And by the way, a lot of people, when they set a goal such as I'm going to lose 2 pounds a month for 2016, a lot of people find that when they have an achievable goal and they meet the goal and maybe they even exceed the goal, they feel better about themselves rather than the person that is focusing on, I have to lose so much weight, or I have to change everything about my diet, and they start to feel very doom and gloom about their situation. You can really set yourself up for success based on the way you talk about yourself and to yourself.
How important is it to have a support network or even a coach to create that for yourself?
Oh, well, I mean, that's why I do what I do. I think for your coach can be a professional like myself, or your coach can also be just surrounding yourself with other people who are healthy. We know that people who are overweight tend to be surrounded by other overweight people and vice versa. We know that if you surround yourself with people who are healthy, who are going to the gym, who take their health seriously, who aren't drinking too much and eating too much, that you are more likely to do the same. So if you can set yourself up for success and surround yourself with other like-minded people, you are really setting yourself up for success and increasing the likelihood that you're going to keep to these goals and really achieve all of them.
Can you just tell me quickly a little bit about your new book out called The Brain Fog Fix?
Yeah, so this book was really a passion project for me. It's called The Brain Fog Fix. It goes through all, as readers can probably guess, it's really a whole person centered approach, addressing mind, body, and spirit, using cognitive behavioral therapy. So we change your thoughts, but we also change your diet. We also change your spiritual practice. We change the way you sleep. We change the way your relationship to technology. So it really is a whole person centered approach to wellness and well-being and happiness and joy. It's doing quite well here, and I'm just so overjoyed that here in the U.S. it's on the New York Times bestseller list, and I think that I think that speaks to the fact that so many people have brain fog. I think that's one of the reasons why it's been so successful. And one of the things that really gives me such great joy is all of the people who have followed my program, who feel so happy and really changed their lives through the course of this program.
And if any of our listeners want to find out more about your work or want to contact you, how could they do it?
Yeah, so I'm of course I'm on social media channels, but they can also just go to my website, which has all the links to my social media, and that's drmikedow.com, DRMIKEDOW.com.
Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.